Hey guys, welcome to another video. My name's Jason. I'm the Moto Medic, and today I'm gonna go over the basics on what you should be doing to winterize your bike. Those of us that don't have the opportunity to ride year-round because we get like a 2.5 to 5 foot blanket of snow every year, or even if it's just bone-chilling cold where you are, if you're smart, you winterize your bike. It's 3 syllables long, I know, but it's not a big process. You don't wanna be that person when your friends call you up to go riding in like March and you go to start your baby up, it doesn't start. You want to be the person that's like, I am so ready to ride that I'm going to call all my friends March 2nd because it's starting to thaw and we got to get out. I know it's only 42 degrees, but we got to get out riding, man. Let's go. Hey, Bernie, how you doing? Being a good boy? One more swipe at it here. We'll start there. The first thing that I'm going to start looking at on the bike is the tires. I'm going to look at the tread and I'm going to set the tire pressures. Luckily for me on this bike, I just swapped these tires onto the bike. They've been recently mounted and balanced and I know everything is good on them. So I really don't have to check much on these tires aside from maybe give them an inspection, make sure there's no nails or screws or anything in them that shouldn't be. Aside from that, just a once over and a look and a setting of your tire pressures is good to go. I will show you the tires that did come off of the bike though, and we can go ahead and inspect those. Now this is the tire that came off of my bike. About 3,000 to 4,000 miles on the tire, and it does show some significant signs that it is needing to be replaced. First thing I look at is the shape of the tire rounded? And on mine, I have done a track day on this tire, and it has a definite little, I like to carve canyons too, so it's got a little edge right here that is a little bit flatter. I'm also looking at some cupping right here in this area of the tread. And then these tires do have wear bars, and I'm getting down to where they're about halfway down. Sure, I could ride them, commute on them. They would probably be fine for a couple of trips, but I wouldn't really want to be on them in the rain. And I didn't like them anyway. Don't make fun of my not having chicken strips, okay guys? Please, I don't want to hear it. This tire has been very well used, and so it is definitely good to have off of my bike and sitting on a bike that I just roll around the shop for now until it gets tires. If those tires were still on this bike, I would definitely not consider even riding with them anymore, much less leaving them on the bike for the entire winter without having them ready to go for next season. I would probably just go ahead and buy myself an early Christmas present and get them swapped out, and that way, ready to go for next year. The next thing you want to check is the condition of your brakes. If you've been riding all of the last couple seasons on brakes without having looked at them, it's definitely a good idea to check them out. You want to just check for the amount of wear that the brake pads have. You also want to check at the lever to see how firm the lever might be. If it's too spongy, maybe it's time to bleed your brake lines. I am only on the 2nd season on this bike, and last season I didn't even put a half of a season on it. I bought it at the end of the year. But I'm gonna go ahead and just check them once more for good measure. That way I know that next season everything's good to go and I can get right back on the bike and go for a ride. In order to get a real good idea of what my brake pad life looks like, the easiest way to do that is to get up into an area where you can actually physically see the brake pad itself. From the back of my brake calipers on this bike, I can get a pretty good look. If I had it out of the wheel chock here, I could turn the wheel and get a better look straight down at the brake pad to see what the wear is like. If you prolong changing those brake pads out and you let metal grind on metal, then you're gonna be in for a lot more than just a couple $100 in brake pads. I always say replace stuff before you need to. It's just peace of mind. If you know that the season's coming to a close and you're thinking that, you know what, I've been talking to myself about doing the brakes this year. Save up, buy yourself that early Christmas present. Lucky for me, the rear brakes on this thing are super easy to get to and get a good look at. The next thing I check out is And really it's because I can do it at the same time. I'm just, for the sake of this video, making it two separate sections. Give the forks a look, give your rear shock a look. With your forks, you're looking for any cracking in your dust seal here. What happens with used bikes or older bikes that haven't had this done in a while is this seal starts to dry out. You start to get some cracking in that. Any cracking can let some dust in and can deteriorate your inner seal there. Takes a little bit of life out of your fork seal and can cause leaks early. So get in here with your hands, your fingers, feel for any oil on the back of this. And if you do find that you have a leak in a fork seal, get it taken care of as soon as you possibly can. The reason for that is that any of that oil that comes out of here while you're riding just blows right onto your brake caliper, and then oil on your brake pads, it's no good. Nothing works when you have oil on your brake pads, least of all your brakes. So fork seals are very important to make sure that not only your suspension works right, but that your brakes work right as well. So get it checked out, make sure that nothing's leaking. And if you have some leaks there, get your forks serviced as soon as possible. With the rear shock, you're doing the same thing. You're just inspecting for any leaking that might be occurring. If you're like me and you keep your bike clean all the time, as clean as you possibly can, not only does it look really, really good, but it's easy to see any leaks. The next thing I want to get a look at are the lights. Just want to make sure everything's working. Turn signals, high beams, marker lights. I don't have any cool LEDs. And along with all of that fun stuff, I actually like to do the odd thing and check my charging system. You want to get to the battery, and on this bike it's really easy to get to. Just have to take the rear seat off, pull up a lever and pop the front seat off. And then I'm going to go grab my multimeter and check my battery terminals, make sure that I have a good charge going on when the bike's running. So might as well get that going right now. Charging system on the bike should be reading at over 14 volts. So I got my trusty multimeter here. And I'm at 14.46 volts, 14.46, 14.47. So charging system, we can shut that off. And I know now that everything's good with the charging system, so shouldn't have anything to jump out at me next year. Now's also a good time where if you don't already have one on your bike, I definitely recommend, if you're going to store your bike all winter long, get a battery tender, because once the battery's dead, it doesn't like to always come back to life. Keeping it topped off is your best bet. So I already have my battery tender in there, but I just make sure that my connections are still good on the battery itself, and then I can pop the seat back down, and my plug is over here off of just zip tied to my frame on the subframe. And I'll be ready to stick it in the corner and plug it in. This next part's going to kind of suck for anybody that has a full fairing bike. It's the check the coolant part. Now, a lot of full fairing bikes, the actual coolant tank, the overflow tank is a little bit hard to get to. But that doesn't mean you can't get to it. It just means it's a little bit tough to get to. But it's always, you should always be able to see the tank, and you should be able to see the lines, and you should be able to see the cap in which you can fill a little bit more if need be. So I'll go ahead and get into that right now. On my Cowie Z900, it's relatively easy. The cap is just up underneath the frame right here, and I can see the tank right here. With a flashlight, I should be able to see the level and just see where I'm at. And if I need to add any, now's the time, and I'll go ahead and do that. Well, if you look close enough with my light on, you can see the cap to my coolant reservoir, my overflow tank for my coolant reservoir anyway. So that overflow tank has a little hash mark on the high end and on the low end, of which you can't see with this camera angle, but I can barely see that I am just at the low line. Because I can see that the bike's also leaning a little bit, but I am above the low line. I'm in spec. I'm gonna probably go ahead and leave it. I don't need it to be too full. So for now, I'll go ahead and leave that alone. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is clean, lube, and inspect and adjust if I need to my chain. You don't like to go up sometimes. Okay, let's go ahead and get a look at this. Give your chain a good inspection, a good visual inspection. Make sure that nothing's binding up or kinking, that this one hasn't been lubed in a little while. I did a ride a couple 100 miles a couple weekends ago, and I just parked the bike. I didn't even come in here and do anything with it and adjust or lube anything. It's probably at the limit. It's about 1.25 inches slack. It's probably on the long end. I could probably adjust that out, which I might. So let's go ahead and get a look at my sprockets. And giving them a visual inspection, looking at any sharpening of the teeth on my rear sprocket, I'm looking at none. So really good. 3,100 miles on the bike. I'm not expecting that I'm gonna see a lot anyway, but you definitely wanna get in here. So if you have these really pointy sprocket teeth, you want them to have a little bit of a flat spot at the top. And if you're starting to get this like shark fin looking point to them, get them changed out. You're just gonna start rotating that chain around. And my guess is that your chain is pretty much garbage by that point anyway. Cotter pin first. I had to grab a ratchet on this other side and just hold it in place. And I've got my keeper nut. Just tighten that a tad. And I'll match the other side up with that. Should be good now. Better. I like that much better. So I'll tighten that back down. And that axle nut. We got a new clevis pin. I don't like those cotter pins. That won't go anywhere and does the exact same job as that other thing. Guys, I'm really at the end of it. I'm about done with the entire process. It doesn't take a lot. It's not hard. You guys could totally do this if you wanted to. If you wanted to not, you could just bring it to me and I'll do it for you if you're in the North Idaho and Spokane area. Next thing and the last thing is an oil change. I'm gonna put a fresh oil filter and all new oil in this bad boy, and she's ready to roll. Provided it comes off. Oh, that's some nasty oil. The oil looks good. It's just dirty and dark and brown, and I'm going to have a lot better shifting capability after today. This filter wrench doesn't like these small filters all the time. So we get the big a tool for every job. Absolutely. You're not going to stay on there, are you? Yeah, I didn't think so. Lube the oil O-ring on the filter. Always lube the O-ring on the filter, and then make sure that there's not an additional O-ring still stuck on that part, because that can create bad things. Massive oil leak if you have two O-rings on there, because it's not going to seal. It's going to leave a big gap. So there we go with a new filter. I just hand tighten these things pretty good. They're not going to go anywhere. we're gonna go ahead and cap it. I'm not trying to get to bone dry. I just want to have a nice, fresh oil pan. They are one-time use, but they always have a little extra on them. And fire it up. And we'll fire it up just to make sure that everything's circulating, and I want to check that my oil pressure light goes off first thing. No oil pressure light, we're good. And I'm gonna let the oil settle into that a little bit just to recheck it in a minute or two. WD-40, do not spray it directly on the chain. No good. It gets inside the links, it deteriorates all of the grease inside of the links of the chain, so do not spray WD directly on your chain. It might be good, or I don't know, maybe if you're in, I spray it on my chain in my little dirt bike in Mexico, but that's about as far as I would go with that. So a little on a rag, just like that, and I literally am just gonna scrub down my chain. It's just taking the surface dirt off and making it nice and clean so that when I put some new lube on there, it doesn't have any garbage or gunk that I'm gonna stick to the chain. And the WD-40, like I said, it can deteriorate the grease inside the links, so you don't spray it directly onto the chain. Again, I'm just wiping this stuff off. I'm not spraying directly on to anything. I don't want to do that. Now that I've got that, I'm ready to go ahead and lube. And I usually rest my hand on the actual rear set or the foot peg, and that way I've got just a nice clean shot at the back of the chain, and I just spray her down. Both sides of the hinges on the chain, and then a little bit on the outside here. Good to go. All right. Now we can get a true look at the oil level that we're at, and we are basically right in between the hash marks after starting the bike, letting the oil circulate through the engine and fill up the oil filter. I want it a little bit higher than that, so I'll just top it off and just get us to the level I want it to be at. And I'll wait a second and watch that rise. Didn't come up too much, we'll keep going a little. There we go. I think that's much more appropriate. You can, if you so choose, use a fuel stabilizer in your bike when you are doing this storage over the winter. I personally don't. I don't usually have a problem. I just put a little fresh gas in it at the beginning of the season and everything works out just fine. If you are going to use it, follow the directions on the back of the bottle. If you have a carbureted bike, then you're not going to want to let the motorcycle sit on the kickstand or even on a stand with the float bowls full of fuel. If you're able to get your bike on that stand, start the bike, let it warm up, and then shut your fuel petcock off and let all of those float bowls drain out completely. Just let all of the fuel get used. Let it smell up the garage. It's the last time you're going to get to smell it for the season, so you might as well. But that way, all of those little chambers inside of your carburetors are nice and clear. They've just had air going through them, no fuel that can get stuck and gummed up and make March and April suck because you just got to fork out a bunch of money on getting your carbs rebuilt. So use a fuel stabilizer if you want to, and if you're going to have a carbureted bike, then definitely run it until those carburetors are bone dry. Bike's ready to roll. So we're going to go ahead and lift her up here. Drop her down. Now guys, the last bit of advice that I'll give you before you put away your bike for the winter is very, 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 very easy. Most of you already know this. Most of you already have one in your shop or your garage or wherever you're putting your motorcycle already. And that is wherever you're about to store this thing, and you're gonna go and winterize your bike. Put it on a stand. If you have a front stand and a rear stand, even better. But if you get it up on a stand, then you don't have to worry about it falling over on accident wherever you're storing it for months on end. That's it. There you go. You've winterized your bike. You can put it away, you can lock the door, you can put a cover over it. You don't even have to worry about it. If you do all of those things and plug it into a battery tender and leave it on a stand, you can let that sucker sit until the cows come home, and your bike is going to start up almost guaranteed. Your bike's going to start up and be ready to ride. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'm glad you stuck it out. Give it a like if you thought it was informative and you got something out of it. And if you like more of this stuff, please subscribe. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.